Welcome back, listeners. We see you've returned to the Netherworld once again in this bone-chilling and downright hilarious episode of the Backseat Babes podcast. We're continuing our discussion of Beetlejuice the Musical with an emphasis on the music and stagecraft of their North American touring production. But before we summon the ghost with the most, like, follow, and subscribe to us on all major social media platforms to stay up to date on news and reviews from here in Michigan and the larger theater community. Spoiler warning, if you haven't seen Beetlejuice the Musical before and wish to remain unspoiled about what you can expect, make haste, as in mere moments the juice will be loose and there's no containing his excitement to be on the living side once more. However, if you're still with us, thanks again for joining us as we talk about this show about death. We got through that one a lot easier today.
We did it.
RJ, we're back for part 2. We are excited to talk about the music and the stagecraft, which we both learned is the word for everything under the sun that is in the story and the music. So I'm going to throw that in everywhere I can. But to recap real quick, episode 1, we went over the story, cast, and standout moments. The story is an adaptation of the Tim Burton movie featuring the story of Lydia and Beetlejuice. Lydia, who is lost her mother and is looking to reconnect with somebody, and ends up stumbling upon Beetlejuice, who is got ulterior motives, to say the least. There's also Adam and Barbara as they're trying to find their new life as ghostly inhabitants of the house, and chaos ensues. Pretty much sums it up, right, RJ?
I think you covered it.
Perfect. That's all I needed to hear. So for the music of Beetlejuice the Musical, we got an original score here by Eddie Perfect, which, is it perfect? Is this perfect? It was nominated for the Best Original Score at the Tonys in 2019, 2020. I think first, before we talk about each individual song, I would like to talk about how you would classify this show, because we talked about this kind of sort of on the way home as we're walking to our car. And I think the first words out of your mouth was, I don't know how I would classify this.
Yeah, which then I immediately tried to do some recon, and it's still cult classic. Hard to say, because is the movie considered a cult classic?
Yes, but also I guess this depends on so can you compare to a cult classic if what it's based on is a cult classic if the Broadway show is only 6 years old? That's really tough to answer, because where does this fall? This isn't exactly family friendly. I mean, it is. Yeah, it is, but it's not.
It's modern. Obviously, it's made for the modern ear person. Definitely, I think geared towards maybe younger to middle aged folks.
Sure.
I think I could be totally wrong on that. I mean, all ages aside from children, but even then, there were clearly children in the audience, which was a little bit shocking to me. I did not look up the rating of the show, and I only say that, which the world today, I can't even get into it.
You're we don't have enough time.
Social norms now, and maybe I just grew up under a rock, but when I was a kid, we didn't swear, we didn't even hear swearing. I mean, and when I say swearing, I mean the word stupid was a swear word, which I know is a little bit extreme, but they were dropping F-bombs left and right in Act 2. And
there was a lot of fucks.
That surprised me a little bit, because even when I think of what's on TV today and how it's graded, that feels like at least mature audience.
Well, because when you think about a movie rating, at PG-13, you get one F-bomb. You get to drop the F word. You get to drop fuck once. I mean, we're a mature podcast, actually, because I can't keep my mouth shut half the time.
Well,
you know what I mean?
And I looked it up. Recommended for ages 10 and up.
Interesting.
Not explicitly R, but contains mature situations, suggestive material, and potentially disturbing content.
Because this show, granted, we talked about this a little in Act 1, but there's a lot of mature jokes. There's a lot of dropping of sexual jokes of Beetlejuice is making out with everyone. He's clearly bisexual, pansexual.
Yeah, that I think some of it goes over kids' heads, right? If I think back to even some Disney movies, I'm okay, this part was made for the adults, which I think part of that you could claim in this show. But yeah, the parts that are physically happening, I mean, let's be real. If you have a highly conservative person come into this show, I think they'd leave pretty upset. But yeah, you have a couple making out with a demon, both male and female. You have a child bride. You have a couple cracks about politics that are obviously liberal leaning. So there's a lot that, again, I mean, I guess if I'm like 10 years old, maybe I'm laughing because everyone around me is laughing.
Sure.
But the adults in the room definitely were like, oh.
It's interesting because when you talked about in the last episode about Beetlejuice Jr., in my head, I was thinking, I was like, clearly the part that gets taken out the most is probably Beetlejuice, because if you take out Beetlejuice, the story itself could be very family friendly. But Beetlejuice himself is the one, like you said, like the jokes for the adults. He's the one that's clearly written for the adults of being like, haha, we can all laugh about the fact that we're talking about having sex with Adam and Barbara at the same time. Like, and we can all giggle about that. And the adults did. And that, you're right, that probably flew over the heads of the little ones.
Yeah, I mean, like they literally talk about orgies, right? And they literally, there's so many things. I'm not sure that I would recommend to, like, if a family member came to me and said, should I take my kid to this? I'd probably say like maybe tween or teen and above.
Sure. It's interesting because growing up in a house that I did as well, while we did talk about things, we also didn't have it so like blatantly in our face. So when I took my nephew, 2 or 3 years ago to see Six, and like I said, like as we're going in there, I thought, oh man, he's only 13. Like, what am I doing? Like, is this appropriate for him? Because they do talk about sex a lot, and he ended up handling it very well. And I thought about this, and I was like, I don't know if I would have taken him at 13. He would have been embarrassed as all hell, as there's all of these jokes, and would he be able to, like, he wouldn't feel comfortable about that. So it definitely depends on like where you are as a family and where you are as like a person. Like, I thought it was funny, but I'm also a 30-year-old adult.
Right. And to be fair though, and I you know, we ran into some friends at the production, and I was thinking about it because some of them are children, and while there are mature themes, part of me is like, we shield kids from so much these days. And like art and theater are supposed to be expressive and
Correct.
kind of like eye-opening. And so if there was anywhere, like, I would much rather a child be exposed to a mature theme in a play
Sure.
than in the hallway at school. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
Because it also is art. It is a play. It is like, that is a characterization. It was a choice. It's not particularly real life. And
Agreed.
censorship is such a real thing in today's time. Not to be political, but like it just,
but true.
Like, here we are. So if this is the only way that exposure happens, then so be it. But let's not pretend like half of these things aren't said in the hallway at school, or that your kids aren't hearing you with your spouse or with your partner swear or whatever. Like, the internet exists. Nobody is that naive. And if they are, by choice. And if they are and they're sitting through Beetlejuice, like, they're probably either one, hating their lives, or two, they're continuing to be naive by choice.
For sure.
So
for sure.
That was a rant that we didn't need, but you're welcome.
It's okay. But speaking of the classification of the music, then, I would argue that maybe this does have, like, the music itself does maybe lean towards, I use traditional Broadway feel, but that also doesn't feel right. Like, it's like a contemporary spin on a traditional Broadway show. Like, there was a lot of stand and sing, stand and belts, whatever you say, like Dead Mom. Like, let's use Dead Mom as an example. She's pretty much standing there and singing that at the top of her lungs. And like, that felt very much like okay, maybe not the topic, but the song itself could easily be like, the type of music it is could be inserted into, as I say, like a Phantom of the Opera, but you know what I mean? Like, more of like an older show with like a contemporary feel. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a power ballad, right? And it's probably like one of the first solo ones, I think, in the show.
Yeah,
And
I would agree.
it is. I also was trying to think of another show or another example in which it was something similar. Of course, there's probably 1,000 examples that I can't think of currently, but it is traditional in that way. You're like, okay, we're getting the lead on stage by herself singing this song. Great. Obviously, for the story, it is kind of important. And we do hear themes of that specific song like at least 2 to 3 times throughout the rest of the musical. But yeah, it is a still, in general, I would say the music of this show is very contemporary pop centric musical theater.
There you
go. I don't know that I would say traditional.
Okay. More like a Dear Evan Hansen almost.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it feels today-esque. Like it feels like it could have, I know it's a couple years old, but even so, it feels like it was made for the audience of today, not the audience of 20 years ago.
Which I think when you look at the music, that's kind of interesting you say that, because there is most of the songs, again, original score by Eddie Perfect. A lot of the songs are original, but they do mix in songs from the original Beetlejuice, like Deo, Jump in Line. But like the Jump in Line, Shake Sonora, I liked that they actually, and I don't remember this from last time, but they infused Dead Mom into that a little bit later in the song right before it closed, where I was like, oh, that was a really cool callback, because it's mixing the music from the old version of Beetlejuice and bringing it to the new Beetlejuice to make it a little more contemporary. Because again, Beetlejuice is almost 40 years old. So when you look at that, that's kind of a cool way to kind of bring it into the future.
Well, and people expect it, right? They're like, I hope. It kind of reminds me of that TikTok trend, right? Where like, I hope they play blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Those songs. Like, I hope they do Deo.
Well, of course they do. Yeah.
Like, who even are you?
Which closes out Act 1 too.
Yes. Yeah. It gives it the flavor. It brings it back to its roots, but it stays true to what's happening on stage.
Was there any song or musical performance that really stood out to you?
Oh, I mean, there were some incredible group numbers. Honestly, there's so many songs in the show that I can't even remember them all, but there were some really good group numbers. The Dead Mom Ballad is probably one of the most notorious songs out of this show.
Sure.
Just because the vocal control is absurd, and also we don't get too many lead women that are like alto-y. And this is definitely kind of a lower like mezzo vocalist, which I think is really cool. But I am blanking on the name of the song, but it's with Delia and Lydia in Act 1.
Oh, the happy one.
Yes. Yeah, I think it was just the mixture of humor and musicality was just fun. But
No Reason. Sorry, I looked it up.
Yes. Between that and What I Know Now, which was the beginning of Act 2, I believe. Ish.
What I Know Now was with Miss Argentina.
Yes. Yeah. Also, that one, dance-wise, was probably one of my favorites.
That was really cool.
Plus, Shrunken Head.
Yeah. The cool thing is that they didn't have a lot of like dance numbers, but that was the one that like had a dance number. You know what I mean? Like that, and like I think the opening of Act 1 with right after the Girl Scout, when it's like they're bringing in the tap dancers, which like the pizza delivery guy, the delivery man. Like yes. there wasn't too much dancing or like big numbers in there, but those ones were really good.
Yeah, agreed.
I do have to say that I did really like Ready, Set, Not Yet as well. I think that's a really cool song to introduce Adam and Barbara with. And it's one that actually got reprised like quite a few times throughout the show. They keep going back to not being ready because they have this fear. And like there's the fear of having kids, but then there's the fear of being ghosts. And then there's the fear of letting Lydia down and moving on. And so I did like that this, like, there was a few songs that they kept coming back to. They kept coming back to these different themes, and everyone seemed to have like a very distinct theme to them, you know?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of foreshadowing, a lot of calling back to that song specifically gave me Hamilton vibes because of the kind of quick
Rappiest,
not rap, but just the rhythmic singing. We don't get, it's very specific, and almost no musicals do it. So that was fun to hear.
But going back to the Miss Argentina song, when you talked about, we're going to talk about like the set design and the puppets and stuff like that. There was quite a few puppets in here, but one of them is the shrunken head guy, which they actually achieved on stage. Which it blows my mind when you see the sandworm or like the shrunken head guy on stage. Like, what a cool aesthetic from that Tim Burton world that has made it onto the stage. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, the attention to detail with those things, right? Because you can pull them off and they can be impressive to just exist, right? Like anything, I think puppetry in general, people are like, ooh. But I also know the back end of that is so complicated and takes so many people. That the sandworm, I'm sure there's multiple operators. I'm sure there's a ton of mechanics in that. For it to go on without a hitch, especially because that specifically, like, it comes in from multiple entrances. So you are literally maneuvering this massive, and it wasn't just like, oh, it's peeking its head in. Like, it was halfway across the stage.
Yeah.
If not 3/4 of the way. And so it's huge. And then, of course, Shrunken Head Guy. I was watching because I, of course, thought it was hysterical, but the detail of the head actually moving in alignment with where everyone else's heads were moving, literally doing the choreography, not just as a massive body on stage, but because every detail, every head movement, every step was correct with the choreography, which is good riddance on the person in that costume, because I literally was sitting there. I was like, I wonder how they do that. Like, I wonder if they have a chin strap, and if they move their neck a certain way, like it also moves that way. I mean, there's so many mechanisms because they're also carrying they've got to be either on stilts or have heightened boots. Then you're carrying like a musket that's also like 7 feet long.
Yes.
So again, and still doing all the choreography that everyone else was doing. So,
and like during the final act, the final song of Act 1, I mean, we had somebody who had the shrimp hand come out of the shrimp, and then you could see, like, eventually you could see that they were operating it, but like there were so many of those details to call back to the film that took like theater magic, like actually took magic to bring it. They had a lot of like flames going on, which I thought was really cool, like to signify Beetlejuice's magic. Setting things, people were catching the flames. I was like, this is just so cool, because you don't see a lot of stage magic in shows anymore.
Yeah, the technical piece of this show with those pieces specifically, which, again, like, as someone who does theater pretty frequently, there were certain parts that I was specifically watching, like when they stab through Beetlejuice, watching him the portion from wherever he was hiding it, and even towards the beginning, I think when Barbara's hand was on fire, they had the fire mechanism in her hand, and I think she like sneaked it into Adam's pocket or something like that. Of course, not trying to like tell all the secrets, but it is, as a theater person, it is funny and interesting to be like, where are they going to put it? Where's it going to go? Because it's not real, right? And it is still very, very magical. It is very cool. But you're like, part of me, the back theater part of me is like, oh God, they gotta put it in someone's pocket, put it away, hide it, don't let anyone see. Because as an actor, that's what you're probably thinking. It's like, okay, I gotta get rid of this. I gotta whatever. So
It's funny you say that, because last time I saw it, when she flew, like when she like rose up the stairs, and I was like, oh my God, how did they achieve that? And it happened so fast I didn't catch it. And then I saw the mechanism beforehand, and I saw her go up and came down, and then Adam rolled the janitor bucket over there while everyone was dancing in the front, and he's like dancing in the background, and he held it there, and it dropped off of its track into the bucket, and he just rolled the bucket off stage and went back to dancing. I was like, those little pieces that you just don't, like, if you're not looking or you don't know to look, that achieve the magic, that are so simple. Like, he just literally rolled the mop bucket over, and it dropped in there, and he rolled it off. Like, it was so cool.
well, and that in itself takes so much work and so much practice too. Again, shout out to the people in the back end, making sure they're setting the stage every time. They're making sure all of those pieces work. Because if you miss it in that split second moment, it's over. Like, you just move on. So
right. Speaking of setting the stage, so you know me, I'm not a big fan of screens, of the digital screens. And last time, I don't believe that they had as many digital screens. They definitely optimized this with digital screens. But what I loved about the set of Beetlejuice the Musical was that not only did they have screens, but they used set pieces. Like the living room was the living room. It switched to the attic. There's pieces that came down. There was the roof that made the house feel like that. But they also used the curtain as a prop. And I love a curtain that can move. But they're truly what
Death Becomes Her.
Yes, because it was also purple. And like they used projections on the curtain, they used them on the house, and they achieved all of the like what felt like Tim Burton magic. But like there was actually still a physical set that they could use. And so I was absolutely ecstatic to see, even though we moved from the Detroit Opera House to a smaller stage, it was all still there, and it was still practical even with digital effects.
Yeah, they did do a very good job at blending the modern world of technology and what theater is going to look like with that, but also still staying true to being present and utilizing the space in the best way.
Was there anything about the effects with like the digital age that didn't? I know you are Mr. Technical here, so is there anything that like didn't sit well with you?
I think it didn't feel like too much, because I've been through shows where it's just, I think if they hadn't have had a set on stage, I would have felt like it was too much. Interesting, the transitions with like, I think at one point it was like the wind in the trees or the bats, and I don't know if it was like necessary. Like, I think you could have just run in front of the curtain. But I get why they made that choice. And honestly, if you have the ability to do that, then great. But
it felt very child movie-ish.
Yeah, I thought it worked. It wasn't so noticeable that I was like, why are they doing that?
I do want to say that I don't always appreciate a strobe light in my eye. And there was a moment where those strobe lights were super bright towards the end as they were getting ready for the Netherworld. And I was like, you are shooting me in the eye with that bright ass strobe light.
Well, and they obviously were doing it so that you couldn't see them clearing the set, which I understand. But I almost think people wouldn't mind, like just a little bit lighter, because as experienced previously, you have folks who are epileptic or have other issues, and those lights are intense. And they go on. I mean, it was a good, 15 seconds?
At least.
And while that doesn't sound like a lot, while you're sitting in a transition, that is very long. So I think there's other ways, like use something else, or use that in tandem with something else, so it doesn't feel like, because all that ended up happening is I avert my eyes, which maybe it's the goal, right? I'm going to look down. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to look somewhere else.
Yeah,
there's probably other ways to do that.
That being said, before we close up, I do have to know your opinion. I know I read your review, but like comparatively to Beetlejuice, the movie, this is better. I think this is better than the movie. I think that this is a strong thing, but I also talked a very big game. So I want to know, like, comparatively to the movie, how was it? But also comparatively to how I fucking talked this up, how was Beetlejuice the Musical?
Yeah, I think it's in its own. It's so hard to actually rate it. I think it is very good for what exactly it is. I can't imagine it being any other way, I guess is a good way to put it. So, yeah, I would recommend it definitely to folks, which I think speaks for itself, even if you didn't like the movie. Like, for instance, I know many of my family members, not a fan. One of my best friends literally was like, I hate the movie. I'm not going to go see the show. I would recommend the show to that person because I think while there is creepy, it's not gross, creepy. It's just not the same like there are pieces of Tim Burton's, but it's not the same.
It has an identity of its own.
Yeah, it's funnier. There's more happening, and there's more for you to be involved in comparatively to what may feel like a gross, what I call gross movie.
While this is a musical that I would always catch over and over and over again, would you go see this again?
I would. I think there's a lot I want to catch more, like, because I'm not familiar with it or with the music. There are things that I feel like I may have missed that I wouldn't mind seeing again. And just, again, the music is very catchy. It's very good.
You will have a good time.
Yeah, there wasn't a moment where I looked at my watch that I don't have. But you know what I mean? Like, I never went down to look at my program and be like, what song are we on? And yes. I know, listeners, we've all been there, right? We've all been sitting in the audience and been like, all right, 3 more till the intermission. There was not a moment of that for me in this. And so, therefore, would see again.
And so with that, we have wrapped up our Beetlejuice the Musical discussion. Stay tuned for future episodes of the Boxseat Babes podcast, where we will be discussing shows both here locally and on Broadway. Thank you again for joining us here in our box seats. Till next curtain call.